The following episode contains sensitive topic information that may not be appropriate for young listeners, as well as religious or other views that may not reflect those of the Sirens team.
Hello out there,
Hey.
listeners and viewers, and Lindsay. Hey. As promised, we are back with an exciting topic for you tonight. It's the first time we've ever, I think, covered anything like this on the podcast. And in just a minute, I'll introduce our special guest. But you may notice that Ryan's not here with us tonight. He had something come up at the last minute, so Lindsay and I are going to carry on. We're going to carry on.
I'm so excited.
Yes, I know you are. We've been texting back and forth today about questions that we want to ask and everything. But how's your day been?
It's been good. It's been really quiet today. I'm still on spring break. I don't want it to be over. But it's been good. It's been a relaxing day, really quiet, just chilling.
That's good. Yeah. Well, we were off today too for the Good Friday holiday, and I just kind of did a little podcast stuff and tried to rest as much as I could to get over this. I've got everything wrong over here. I hope I don't look as bad as I feel.
You sound like you're feeling a little bit better, at least.
Yeah. I can say I'm a little bit improved. I guess all the meds they gave me are helping. So, Yay for modern medicine. Living better through modern medicine. So, let's before we bring our guests in, I was gonna just thinking about like each passing year in the last few years, we're hearing more and more and more about UFOs in the news and whistleblowers coming forward to talk about working on advanced extraterrestrial technologies for the government and telling what they've seen and heard in secret government facilities. And so it's really a hot topic, maybe even more so, now than ever, with the Navy, getting video footage of different things that they can't explain and they say they've never seen. So Leslie and Stephen Shaw, and our producer is going to bring them in so we can introduce them to our listeners and viewers. Hi, Leslie. Hi, Stephen.
Hi. Hello. Hi. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for reaching out, for being on with us. We're so excited when we can have guests on, and especially authors who have written on this subject. So I'm gonna just tell our listeners that you guys have kind of had a lifelong love affair with UFOs and that subject, and you've got your own personal experiences that you're going to share too. And I know I read you spent 20 years researching for your book, and it's titled Who They Are and What They're Up To, and it's available on Amazon. I'm going to order one tonight and read it.
Thank you.
And Leslie and Stephen, we're so pleased to have you come on, like I said, and excited to hear from you. I want you to share a little bit about your background info with us and tell us how you two like-minded people got together.
We're both UFO witnesses. Stephen has seen 5 and I've seen 2. And Stephen has had, his family, we believe, were victims of the alien abduction phenomenon by the tall gray aliens, we believe.
3 generations.
Yeah, and it goes back in his family a long way. And I'm a journalist, and I'm semi-retired now for the paper. I was a journalist for them for about 18 years now. I do copy editing and page layout still from remote computers. But Stephen was a licensed acupuncturist. He's retired now, and he's an orchestral musician. And
I did 6 years in the Navy.
Yeah,
was a cabinet maker and things like that.
Wow, jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Tai Chi teacher for 23 years. So.
And I was his Tai Chi student. That's pretty much how we got together. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's neat. That's really neat.
Yeah.
And you're in California, right? That's where you make your home.
Palm Springs area. Uh-huh.
Yes. Oh, nice. Very nice. So thank you for your service, Stephen. I want to get that right off the bat. And journalism, that's an interesting career. I guess that really helped when you were writing the book.
You bet. I'm definitely the writer in the family and did most of the typing work of the book. But Stephen has a science background more than I, and I really
did
needed
a lot
that.
of research too. Yes,
Yeah,
I did some of the writing, but.
And I needed his science knowledge a lot to do especially the parts about the human brain and the and stuff, and the geology.
And of course, the family background too.
Yes,
that was really
right.
important.
Well, thinking about your individual and your shared experiences, I wanted to ask if there was like a defining moment or something that happened that spurred you to write the book.
Well, it was for me. It was my first UFO. When I met Stephen, I'd heard about all of these experiences in his family and his UFO experiences, and I had never had anything like that happen. And I was actually kind of jealous. I wanted one, I wanted to have my own experience.
Yeah, take me to your leader.
Yeah,
thing.
And then there it was. Finally, in 2005, we were driving home at night, and I was driving, and I was looking through the windshield ahead, and we both saw this white light up ahead in the sky, and I thought it was at first a plane flying into Palm Springs Airport or something.
Yes.
But it didn't have the other blinky lights on, with planes where they have more than one.
The reds
light,
and the greens. Yeah.
Running lights, I guess. And it just kept hovering there, and it got brighter and brighter as we were driving towards it. But then suddenly it took off at full speed and went north over the horizon and was gone in a quarter of a second. It was so fast. It was so visually fast. It spread out in a white line that collapsed behind it, and it was gone in, like I say, a split second.
This is in 2005, by the way.
And it went at full speed too, from the get-go. It didn't like ramp up to that. And if I had to guess the speed, I would have said 20,000 miles an hour. It was just ridiculous fast, ludicrous speed, like in
like in Spaceballs. Yes.
Yeah, ludicrous speed for sure. And then in 2020, we saw another one together, a similar thing where it was a white light in the sky, making impossible angular turns, and then it would stop and hover and then shoot off in these just bizarre emotions that nothing we have can do. When our planes need to make a U-turn, they slowly bank around in a big U, but this thing was turning in a V-shaped turns at full speed.
And it was soundless, of course. This one was actually pretty large compared to the first one we saw.
And it did the same thing. It shot away to the north and was gone. And, before that, I believed Stephen and his experiences like a dutiful wife. I believed what he told me, but you can only believe it like 95% unless you see it for yourself. And then that's where, but now I'm 100% as soon as I saw it. And that's, I think, when I started realizing that we should really write about it. And that's when we started our research for sure. Although you could really say we've been doing research for most of our lives, reading books on the subject.
I really got tired of not knowing. Basically, about 34 years ago, that's when I started doing the actual research as far as like reading books, way before smartphones and the internet, that kind of stuff.
And then he turned me on to a lot of those books too when we first got together. And
it was something that I was very curious about, and I had a lot of unanswered questions in my own development and growing up in my own family background, that things just weren't making sense. So I really, pretty much the research from the book really started 20-30 years ago. And we just got around to it a couple of years ago to actually write it down.
Finally typing it out. In fact, I was sick for a year. I had gallstones and had to have my gallbladder removed for a year. I was kind of chair bound, and that was a really good opportunity to write a book.
Right. Yes. Well, from some of the things that I've read, it seems like you all approach, especially Stephen, approaches the topic of UFOs from like a more scientific perspective. And I want you to elaborate a little bit on what like scientific and historical evidence even points to the existence of aliens and their interactions with Earth and our people. I'm really interested in that.
Well, when we began researching in earnest, we discovered that the UFO theories and UFO facts were not lining up. It just wasn't aligning.
Yeah.
For instance, the theory was that these things are coming from distant star systems and visiting us from, hundreds of thousands of light years away.
Yeah.
And but then you're looking at the evidence that says that we're seeing these things that are being reported worldwide 10,000 times a year. And reporting, we calculate as of only about 10%. So they're really being seen 100,000 times a year, every year, going back hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years.
Yeah,
and that just doesn't make sense that they're coming here from these distances like that for this often. And we kept getting reading reports about UFOs coming up out of lakes, up out of the ocean, up out of mountains, up out of ridges and mesas. They seem to be mostly emerging from planet Earth.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
like and then we learn about various bases, UFO bases that are they're supposed to be secret bases, but word leaks out slowly as whistleblowers come forward. And we know about underground bases in Alaska and New Mexico and
Tibet.
Tibet and Italy. And then there's the evidence of the Ariane under the ice sheet of Antarctica.
Yeah.
It kept pointing to them being more local, more and
like an indigenous population
right
that has cohabitated with us alongside of us.
And then we discovered that in the abduction phenomenon, that was also not aligning. The theory was that the aliens are just curious about us. They want to take cross sampling of DNA evidence from a cross section of humanity for scientific reasons, for scientific purposes. But that turns out to be not what is happening. What's happening instead is that they discover a genome they like, a genetic line that matches their criteria for what they want, and then they'll prey on that line for generations. They'll take that person again and again and again and again through their whole lives, and then they'll start taking their children and their grandchildren. And also the phenomenon, as we started looking at the large amounts of data, we realized that it's almost entirely a Caucasian phenomenon.
And Caucasians make up 16% of the world's population, but it's about a 90 plus percent, as far as like 90 to 95% is what the
abductees are Caucasian.
The reported abductions are primarily Caucasian.
So we started thinking, well, no, what on earth would give them a reason to want so much Caucasian DNA? And when you think about a far distant solar system people coming here, what use would they have with so much Caucasian DNA? But then when we applied our new theory to the idea where these beings that are flying UFOs in our skies are close cousins to us, and that if they've been living in these underground bases for as long as we think they have, they might have a real use for that kind of DNA, that much DNA. A Caucasian branch of humanity that broke away from us thousands of years ago would have all kinds of uses for that much Caucasian DNA. But a distant star system people.
Yeah, there's a lot of very basic needs and reasons for why they're keeping themselves kind of like hidden from the general populace, and we get into that in our book and we describe it in detail, chapter to chapter. We make a very good case for, like, number one, the Great Flood did happen 13,000 years ago.
Yes, we have the proof of it now.
Yeah, we know there's definitely scientific proof for it. A lot of scientific proof. Yeah. So that is when I grew up as a kid, I always thought that was one of the least probable things.
I know in the Bible you're thinking, a great flood, and they had to take a two of every animal.
Turns out it did happen.
But sure enough, and there's a book called I forget the title, but it's written by a man named Fraser, and it was written in the 1700s. And this man tracked down 500 separate flood myths worldwide, all around the world, 500 separate cultures with their own Noah story.
Yeah.
And since the 1700s, when this book was written, there's been a bunch more have been discovered. So really, there's more. There's over like 1,000 of them now. There's 1,000 separate cultures that all have a Noah story of some kind, right? And
Mhm.
my in college, I majored in art, but I minored in ancient art history, and that was very useful in my research as well. And one of the things that we discovered about 3 decades ago was the 13,000 years ago, there was an extinction event in northern North America. We lost the Clovis people and the woolly mammoth and the mastodon and the dire wolf and the saber-tooth cat and
Mhm.
a bunch of other animals too, that too many
And
to name.
yeah,
Really.
a few hung on for a little while, like the giant ground sloth.
Yeah, but it died out shortly thereafter too. And we thought that this sounds like maybe if the flood really happened, the plains could have been flooded, and that could have killed all these animals off. And sure enough, in 13,000-year-old soil, they discovered something called the Uccello horizon. It's a layer of charcoal that's on 4 different continents,
Mhm.
and in the northern half of the planet, and 10 different countries. And then the Younger Dryas boundary is an 1,100-year period of time after that is shows drastic climate upheavals. Well, in those layers of soil, they discovered nanodiamonds. And nanodiamonds form only during celestial impact events of some kind, like a meteor. It enters our atmosphere and it brings dust with it, and that
Mhm.
dust superheats until it forms these microscopic little round diamonds. And they found these diamonds in high concentration in far Northeast America, Canada, near the Labrador Sea. And we thought at first that the Hiawatha asteroid impact was the culprit, but that turned out to be a much older impact crater. But what is the right age is the Younger Dryas comet found in Lake Superior. And that is the correct age. It's about 12,850 years old. So we now know that that is the culprit for causing the extinction event in North America. And we believe that this was the impetus for our race to split and divide into two. Uh, the people that kept their technology and escaped the cataclysm, and the people who didn't. The people who didn't stayed on the surface of the planet, and when the thing hit, most of them died.
Mhm.
We believe our population was reduced to about 10,000 individuals
It's not
living
even a
on the.
belief; it actually shows up in the genetic
Yes,
genetic markers.
yeah. There's
So,
a genetic. They call it a genetic bottleneck, where we were at one point in our history we were reduced to about 10,000 individuals, and
planet-wide.
our entire population has regenerated from those 10,000. And so we thought, well, this is pointing to the Great Flood, and it is pointing to a good reason for our race to split. Did you guys see Deep Impact, that movie?
I don't
I
think so.
don't know if I
Anyone?
have or
No.
not.
It's
I
about
don't.
I'm not
25
sure.
years old now.
Yeah,
So
it's a little old.
Okay.
That's why. But they were faced with the same thing in this movie, where an asteroid was going to crash into Earth and kill everybody. And
Mhm.
their solution to the problem was to dig these, they called them arcs, where they dug in these deep underground cities to and put just the cream of the human crop down there to keep our race alive and then keep
Mhm.
our race from being destroyed.
Ah,
And we think that that is precisely what happened.
wow, that is interesting.
That is so interesting.
And see, it makes more sense than they're not, in our theory, it doesn't require faster than light travel. It doesn't require wormholes or Einstein-Rosen bridges. It doesn't require interdimensional travel or time travel. They're just simply here, sharing our solar system with us. We think they have bases on Mars and on the moon. And on the moon of Mars, which is called Phobos, there's a structure that has been discovered there as well. So they are extraterrestrial in that, yeah, they're coming from Mars sometimes and the moon sometimes, but really they're from here and they're close cousins to us.
and every single one of these 1,200 different flood myths, every single one has one thing in common. There was foreknowledge. There was foreknowledge of a year or two. We're not really sure how many years or how long it was, but people were told to either get to the highest point they could get to, build a boat, build an ark, or to dig in.
Or dig underground,
You know, if they're high enough elevation, like in Turkey, the Anatolian
plateau,
which is like 4,000 plus foot elevation.
Yes.
And you have adequate time to prepare for like what was called the winter like you've never seen before. That Ahura Mazda told the people, he was their god at the time, says you need to dig in, okay. And it's quite amazing what they did.
And they've discovered the underground city. It's called Derinkuyu.
Yes.
And they believe it's at least 12,000 years old. And we happen to know that it goes back 12,855 years in order to and we think they dug in to survive and put these underground arcs to survive. And they didn't lose their technology. Right. Whereas everyone on the surface, we all got chucked back into the Stone Age and had to crawl back out of the Stone Age from there. And it takes, 13,000 years for us to go from the caves to the moon. That's how long it took us, you know. And we think that's why there's so many examples of ancient art history structures, ancient architecture that is actually better. The older it gets, the better it gets, the further back in time it goes. And we think some of the stuff is prior to the flood, and that the people that were on our planet 13,000 years ago were not the primitives that ancient archaeology is saying. We think that, for instance, the Homo sapiens sapien, us, good old us, we have been on the planet for at least 120,000 years, maybe more, but maybe we know for at least that long.
Right.
And mainstream archaeology would have us believe that we sat around for 107,000 years without improving ourselves, without advancement, not even inventing the house, and then suddenly decided 13,000 years ago to get some gumption up and start building something, right? And this makes no sense to us because obviously humanity, we're creative people. We're an industrious people. No matter what else you might say, good or bad about us, we're a busy little bunch, of people. And so that made no sense to us.
Do you have any questions for us, by the way?
I wanted to say, when you were talking, Leslie, about the people who had the advanced technologies and this and that, it made me think of Atlantis.
Yes. Yeah, me too. That's what
Did you have any questions, Lindsay?
Oh, I have a lot of questions. I was going to say, though, Leslie, when I was looking up some research, I did see that you majored in art, and I'm an art teacher, so I love art history and ancient art history. And one of my favorite things to look up and read about is the Anunnaki. Can you speak a little bit about them?
Sure. Although, what we were just talking about, we're talking about 13,000 years ago. The Anunnaki theories come from much longer ago.
450,000 years ago, of course.
Like way back.
According to Sitchin, Zachariah Sitchin, and we've read most of his work, he thinks that the Anunnaki came here on a planet called Nibiru. And Nibiru is a planet that's supposed to, it's actually part of our solar system, but it's in a very large elliptical orbit that goes out 50 billion miles and circles a brown dwarf in the direction of Orion, the constellation of Orion. There's supposed to be a brown dwarf way out there. Now, a brown dwarf is a protostar, and they're hard to see because it's before a star lights up and where you can see it. It's like a baby star. And sure enough, in the 80s, an infrared telescope discovered a brown dwarf in that region. So there's that backing up Sitchin's explanations. And according to Sitchin, the Anunnaki came here searching for gold. And they spent 150,000 years mining the gold themselves. And when their miners just supposedly revolted and refused to work anymore. And that's when the Anunnaki supposedly took Homo erectus and uplifted us into Homo sapien. And there actually seems, I mean, so as far-fetched as this sounds, as crazy as this may sound, there actually appears to be some evidence that this really did happen, you know, because there's, Steve knows more about it. You tell him about the.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I get
he's the science guy, so he gets to say more.
Yeah. Well, as far as what it looks like, you know, from at least Jason Martell, who's also one of the ancient alien guys, whatever. It looks like the neocortex, which is the most recent part of the human brain of the Homo sapiens sapien, was basically laid down about 300,000 years ago. And there's a part of the brain called Broca's brain, which Carl Sagan talked about in one of his books, that is basically the area of the speech center. So now we're dealing with CRISPR technology and all this kind of, you know, fun stuff, right? CRISPR technology and being able to like cut and paste, you know, being able to like take care of things like, you know, lifelong blindness and thinking about, you know, bringing back the woolly mammoth and the dodo bird. We're like, no, we're playing around with this stuff now. We're basically kids playing around with some very advanced stuff.
Yeah.
So anyways, it looks like, according to what he's been able to find out, is that they was a cut and paste job that was done on the neocortex of the human Homo sapiens sapien brain, neocortex, about 300,000 years ago, which in essence gave us the ability to speak. Now, what people forget, especially the naysayers about when it comes to the pyramids and things like that, is that you cannot build something like a pyramid without having a written language and being able to write down mathematics, make a blueprint, have to have archaeological and architectural abilities and engineering abilities. You cannot do it just by saying, let's cut a couple blocks and see what happens. It has to be an organized thing. Okay. Also, too, the human brain, when you think about a tree, you don't think about, especially when you're young, you don't think about TREE. You think about, you see a tree, you see pictographic. The brain, the human brain thinks in pictographic or ideographic means. Okay. Now, written language is a derivation, and certainly like Braille is, we're basically taking a concept and we're making it more abstract. We're taking something very basic and we're making it more abstract. And the only way that we can communicate and be able to do things such as like do blueprints is by having a written language, whether it be Chinese, which is still based on pictographs, or basically a written language. So there's a development that had to happen. Okay, so the thing is, there was like, we were going along as Homo erectus, and we became Homo sapien. Then at a certain point in a very short period of time, we became Homo sapiens sapien. Then all of a sudden, boom, we have the ability to talk. We have the ability to think abstractly.
And it's way too quick. The evolution that we're talking about is like 1 million years worth of evolution that took place in just a few thousand years.
Right, exactly.
And the difference between Homo erectus and Homo sapien is enormous. It has to do with reasoning abilities and creative thinking. Homo erectus is almost like an animal still. It's drinking water, it's lapping water up out of a creek like an animal. Whereas Homo sapien, we invent the cup and the glass, and we sit in the chair and we drink our water that way. You know, we don't. In other words, the ability to invent and create was the enormous difference in the brain.
Yes.
And it actually shows some signs of tampering, and we couldn't have uplifted ourselves, so somebody had to have uplifted us, right? And so the more I read about Sitchin, the more I read his work, the more I liked it. He actually talks about the Enuma Elish, which we don't usually talk about on podcasts, but I found that very fascinating. The Enuma Elish is the ancient Sumerian creation myth that talks about the creation of our solar system. And it happens to fit the actual solar system. This mythology talks originally about a planet that was between Mars and Jupiter, and that this planet was destroyed, and it created the asteroid belt. And sure enough, the asteroids in the asteroid belt, they used to be part of a planet. They're made of these minerals that only form in the forge of interior of a planet. So this rubble field, this is used to be a planet, and they actually talk about it in the ancient Sumerian Mulish, and it also describes how Pluto became where it was.
Also, they count their planets from the outside, from the outside in. Pluto is number 1, and it goes from the outside in, which is also very interesting too.
And the ancient Sumerians, this is 6,000 years ago, they actually had very advanced astronomy. Very advanced. They knew about Pluto. They knew about Neptune. They knew about, and we didn't even.
The Kuiper Belt they knew about.
Yeah, these were thousands of years. These are discoveries that were not made by us, or remade, I should say, by us for thousands of years.
1930s was Pluto.
And they count the planets. Pluto is number 1, and Neptune is number 2. Uranus is number 3. It's like they're counting them from the outside in. You know,
which is so fascinating because. My brain cannot comprehend, like, how did they know that? I think ancient Sumeria is so fascinating.
And there's so many firsts in ancient Sumerian.
Yeah.
They had Congress, they had colleges, they had jewelry making, they had paved roads.
They had mathematics, and they had
ceramics. Scribes. Jobs. Everybody had the job back then, and it's amazing how far advanced they were. In our book, we listed a lot of the first. I can't think of them all right now, but
music and
and they're not attributed to. They should be attributed to Sumerians, but frequently they're attributed to people who rediscovered these things thousands of years later.
Yeah, the Greeks primarily.
And they knew about precession.
Let her ask them questions.
Sorry.
No, I mean, I could just listen all day. I think it's so interesting.
And precession is hard to calculate. It was discovered by, rediscovered again by a Greek who was looking at data from another Greek who'd taken down data hundreds of years before him, and he was able to calculate that the constellations slowly. It takes 26,000 years to make a full loop. But our constellation, our position relative to all the constellations slowly changes.
Every 60 years.
Every 60 years, it changes by 1 degree. So it's hard to notice precession because it takes a whole lifetime before it even moves even 1 degree. But the Sumerians knew all about it, and it's something we only discovered a few hundred years ago.
Yeah, their knowledge is just fascinating.
It's stunning, and so we think that a lot of this knowledge was in existence before the comet hit and separated our species and knocked us back into the Stone Age. So you've heard of Atlantis, right? Well, Atlantis is supposed to be this very modern city with flying cars and a space program and all kinds of futuristic advancements. And I like the theory of Atlantis being in the Doñana bird sanctuary on the coast of Spain. There's this new theory about that. These archaeologists discovered Atlantis is supposed to be an island, but it's supposed to be close enough to the mainland for the bridges to extend to the mainland. So it's never was supposed to be a continent way out in the ocean that sank, right? It's supposed to have been a city-state near the Rock of Gibraltar. And sure enough, up the coast from the Rock of Gibraltar is a big river delta that opens up. And in the middle of that river delta was an island that is now sunk. And when they did ground penetrating radar on this island, it's built of concentric rings, and just like Atlantis would have been. And the ocean floor outside of that river delta got all this detritus, debris, look like cut stones, as if a tsunami filled up the city with water and then pulled the whole city out into the ocean.
Right.
And if as we surmise Atlantis was there, then it was ground zero for the tsunamis that would have come out of the Labrador Sea in the North Atlantic. So that's That's why it would have been completely destroyed if it was really where we thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense, right? That makes sense that
Mm-hmm.
it would be just rubble
Yeah.
and sank beneath the waves because it was pulled out there.
Yeah.
And we think that Lemuria was a continent, was, out in the Pacific Ocean that had a population as well. And we think that they had to relocate their entire population, or as many people as they could relocate, because they were low enough ground where they knew they were going to be swamped as soon as the comet hit.
Mm-hmm.
And that is supposed to be where the people in Shasta have come from. Shasta is a perfect place. Mount Shasta in California is the perfect place to relocate a large population in and put them in safety from tsunamis and cataclysm. It's at 14,000 foot. And so it's high enough elevation where it had been safe from the tsunamis, and it's riddled with enormous interior caverns caused by lava. The lava tubes make these enormous interior caverns inside these extinct volcanoes, and the throat of a volcano goes almost all the way down to the core. So it's a perfect place to relocate a large population quickly that would be safe from that kind of a cataclysm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it is very mind blowing. And one of my questions, and you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to get some more info from you. I'm like, today when I was sitting around thinking, well, why do some people get to see UFOs and be abducted by aliens, and the majority of us don't? And you were
Yeah.
talking about that there must be some kind of DNA genome that they're looking for,
Yes.
and so that you touched on the fact, and I do think you do this in your book too, about the generational abductions. Now, Stephen, would you like to share about your experiences?
I guess
I'm
been here
going to let
about
him talk
30
now.
minutes to speak. So
I am too talkative. I know. I'm going to shut up now.
well, yeah, I mean, my first experiences go back to my age of 3, when I would be commonly be visited by this invisible creature that would jump on me when I was in bed, when I was, child, 3 years old. And it was playful. I didn't think anything of it, thought, was invisible, but it would visit me. It was not, harmful or whatever. And then when I was about 10 years old, I was sleeping in a top of a bunk bed, and my brother was in the bottom of the bunk bed, and I heard this strange sound that I didn't recognize, and it definitely was not the dog. I knew what the dog sound was, so I got out of the bed again, middle of the night, and I was walking down the hallway, and my pulse was elevated, and I was breathing heavily, and I was definitely in adrenal mode, and so I was definitely awake. It wasn't any type of dream state. And as I was ready to, as I was about to like turn the corner into the living room, I just black out. And then a few hours later, I wake up back in my bed. I'm all tucked in. Somehow I've been put back in my bed, and have no recollection about what happened. Now, about a year after that was my first seeing of a UFO. My first UFO that I saw when I was about 10 or 11 was a large orange globe that was going from east. No, it was going from it was going from west to east in the sky about 9:30 at night, and it was just hovering there, and it was going very just this big orange globe. Wasn't a plane or nothing like that. I called Griffiths Park Observatory the next day, and they had no knowledge of that. And then when I was 18 in 1979 in January, that's when a bunch of events happened that myself and my whole family experienced. First night was my dad claimed that his closet doors opened and closed on him during the night, and I just didn't think too much of it. I was a cabinet maker at that time, and my dad was a master cabinet maker. So anyway, so we lived together with my sister. The next night, my dad was in the living room reading something that I had given him, and he came into my room about 9:30 at night and said, Stephen, I think I'm hearing things. I said, what is it, Dad? I said, I'm hearing a silver bell. And sure enough, went to the living room. There was a silver bell being rung inside the wall by the chimney inside the wall. We got my sister, and she heard the very same thing. It went on for about 10 or 15 minutes. We were banging on the wall, and it just then it just stopped. Now, the next morning, we called my mom, and my mom and my brother were living in the house that we were building up in Sonora, California, which is 350 miles away. And she said, the weirdest thing was that, that Philip says that the phone didn't ring, but I heard this bell like the phone was ringing. And she picked up the phone, and there was this a voice on the other line saying, I'm the invisible on Beachy or something like that. And my brother said, no, the phone didn't ring, but she did pick up the phone. So when we were experiencing the silver bell, 350 miles away, she picked up the phone. So the next night, I was sleeping in my bedroom, and I was awakened by this whizzing sound in the air, like a whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And I thought I was hearing things or whatever. It was a bug. And I decided to go, that's going to go back to sleep. And so as I'm going back to sleep, the bed is pushed two distinct times from the foot of the bed, like a shove, two shoves. And being in Southern California, I thought, well, maybe it's like a minor earthquake. And then I don't pay attention to it. I try to go back to sleep, and two more shoves, a little stronger, and then two more shoves, even stronger. And then at this point, I'm getting worried and I'm getting nervous. And then I get three taps on my right shoulder in the mid deltoid area, like tap, tap, tap of an index finger. And I said, I was irritated and scared. So I just rolled over and I said, what? And there was nothing there that I could see, but I knew there was something there. And then I black out. So the next night, I did not want to sleep in my bedroom. So I decided I'm going to sleep in my clothes, my work clothes. I'm going to sleep in the living room. And so I went to sleep in the living room. About 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30, whatever, I woke up, and I was aware of where I was. I looked at my piano, thought about playing the piano. I listened to the little fountain in the other room. So I was awake. And from behind me, from the front door, this 6 to 7 foot tall entity, blue white light entity, skinny, came floating, walking towards me in about a second and a half to 2 seconds, and stopped by my right side, about 25 feet away. And it immediately, when it stopped by my right side, the whole right side of my body was completely paralyzed. And by the way, when it came in, it brought the whole room was filled with blue white light. Just the whole room was just completely filled with blue white light. And it bent down to my right side and it said, "Hi, Steve," in this kind of a whisper, but it was not inside my head. It was from outside, and I couldn't tell it was male or female. And I was thinking, oh, this is the family spirit guide that I had heard about from being a child. We had this family spirit guide that had been with us for like 3 generations, going from Germany to England to the United States. And the family spirit guide's name was O'Glegley. And O'Glegley had appeared to many different people at different times in their lives, either to help them or to whatever. Okay. And I said, oh, I'm going to see O'Glegley. And half of me was saying, I'm really excited. I'm going to see the family spirit guide. The other half of me was saying, dude, you can't move. You are immobilized. And so I was like a 50-50 split between being excited and being scared. And it lasted for maybe 10 or 15 seconds, and then it left. And then I can't remember. In the book, I said that I remember, but I really can't remember what happened after that. The only thing I can remember is that 6 hours later, about 11:30, we're getting ready to eat some lunch. So my dad and I decided I was going to go down and get some lunch, and I pulled out the coins that were in my right side pocket, and all the coins, I kid you not, all the coins were magnetized. I could pick up the coins, and my dad could pick up the coins with each other. They were like, just, you could pick them up. The nails that were in my pocket, everything was magnetized 6 hours later. And we thought that was really, really weird, because you can't magnetize coins. Yeah. Okay. And then the last night, which I have no recollection of, my dad has recollection, is that he was awakened in the middle of the night, and he saw this blue-white light that was this. My whole doorway for my bedroom was filled with this blue-white light. And he just basically said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. So he was getting out of bed, and then a voice in his head said, go back to sleep, Jeffrey. Don't worry, nothing to be worried about, nothing to see here. Just go back to sleep. And that's exactly what he did. And that's when my occurrences happened. My brother had occurrences happen in 1982 over 3 nights when he was 16 up at the house we were building up in Sonora, California, in the woods. The first night, he was awakened by these two bright white lights that were outside of his window. Now, his window faced the creek and basically just woods, and it was a drop off. So it was just woods. There was no road there, no nothing. He saw these two bright lights. My brother, being a very scientific minded guy, being an architect and that kind of stuff, he looked at them and then he blacked out. Now the next night he heard this scrabbling sound underneath his bed, and we had cats at the time, so he thought it was one of the cats. So he just reached down to like pet the cat, and then this human-like hand grabbed his wrist, and then he blacked out.
Oh
Now the next night, it was like a night or two after that, he awoke again in the middle of the night, and he saw what we know now what's going on. He saw about a 6 to 6.5 foot tall, gray, skinny alien in his doorway, just looking at him. And then he just blacks out. Okay, so it happened to me at 18, these kind of things. But see, the whole family, we were experiencing this throughout our whole lives. But you don't, as a kid growing up in elementary school, you don't tell your friends about this kind of stuff. You don't tell that you have an invisible creature that jumps on you. You don't tell about things like that, family spirit guides, or seeing gnomes, because they think either you're lying, or that you're in a haunted house, or you're nuts.
Yeah.
We think they tamper with memories, especially the memory of what is causing these phenomena, what is there. And frequently these tampered with memories have a shimmery kind of quality to them. Both of the boys, he and his brother, they saw garden gnomes one night. These garden gnomes,
I saw him once. My brother saw him many times.
He saw him many times, and he used to hide in the closet. He slept in the closet for a couple of years there because he was afraid. He told Steve he was afraid of the little men that come in the night. And this quality of the shimmeriness, that the gnomes were shimmery. And also Irene, their mother, saw something that she remembers as being very shimmery. And I think this is evident, or a sign of memory tampering, this shimmeriness to their dreams.
My mom was an automatic writer, just like her mother was, from England, with basically communicating with spirits. And
they're a very psychic bunch, his family. The whole family is very psychic. Right now, his sister is his only surviving family member who, and she's a ghost hunter in northern England. She's the sensitive one that can feel the ghosts,
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, they're at ghostly locations, by the way. They'd like a plug, too.
Yeah. That's great.
They're doing that up in northern England, but they're a really psychic bunch, and Stephen is constantly reading my mind. And there is sort of a psychic component to this as well. Like they seem to be interested particularly in people who are psychic. I've found a lot of people in our research that are also abductees talk about being very psychic. For instance, Jean, she is a psychic healer, and she was an abduction victim when she was young. So it's definitely one of the components. And what else? They're mostly Caucasian, but they're also mostly green-eyed, right? And disproportionate number are Basque.
RH negative.
And a higher disproportionate number are RH negative. And they're also a higher proportion of green-eyed people, which green eyes in humans, that is a recessive trait. It's actually a mutation in our
it's like
species.
red hair is not a dominant, it's a recessive trait.
Right.
And it's very rare, right, when compared to the overall population.
Exactly. but it makes up a disproportionate number of abductees.
Yeah, I'm sure you have plenty of questions. So go
I
ahead.
want to know. I want to know, Stephen, what do you think was going on in the amount of time that you said you blacked out and then you came back to? Do you have a theory on that?
Yeah, well, I kind of joke around with Leslie that I don't have any children that I know of, but as far as like the children that I don't know of,
Yeah, there might be hybrid alien
there
children.
may be hybrid versions. There probably are hybrid versions of myself. I'm sure that I've been used. In fact, when I had a very bad accident, a physical accident happened in 2013 on the 29 Palms Naval Marine Base in 29 Palms. I was unloading uh, a U-Haul, and I took a really bad fall at nighttime, and basically broke and separated and tore my right shoulder. I tore all four rotator cuffs, and broke and separated the shoulder. And it took them 2.5 hours to get me to the hospital. Believe me, it was the worst pain I've ever felt. In fact, I was like laughing at the end because I couldn't believe how much pain the human body can feel.
Ludicrous
It was,
pain.
myself having been an
Yeah.
acupuncturist and a Tai Chi teacher, I know pain and I've treated
Yeah.
pain and I know the human body. So for me, I was looking at it from a scientific standpoint that I can't believe this. My hand was completely numb at the end there, and they ended up knocking me up with what they call the Michael Jackson juice. And I can tell you, man, that stuff is amazing. I was sitting on the end. I was sitting on the end of the table, and the physician's assistant was just looking at me, and the doctor came in to reset my shoulder, right? And I'm perfectly awake, and I'm saying, "Well, are you going to do anything?" And the guy just starts like smiling at me. I said, "Well, are you going to reset my arm?" And the next thing I know, I'm fully awake, but my arm is completely reset and the pain is gone.
Yeah.
It's like I had no idea. I had no clue that they
Wow.
were even manipulating and resetting my right arm.
Yeah.
I had no knowledge of it. But anyway, what was the long and short of it was that when they took the x-rays, they found this grain, this rice-shaped grain in my right deltoid that looked like a piece of metal. That it was great. It was basically the size of a grain of rice, and it was nowhere near where the break had occurred. And the X-ray technician said, "Well, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's an old injury or something like that."
But it's been well documented, the phenomenon of them putting these little trackers in people, and they look just like that on the X-rays. They look like these little grains of rice.
When I was 18, those 3 taps on my right shoulder in the exact area where that thing was found.
Mhm.
So anyway, so I have copies of the X-rays that I'm going to try and get enlarged enough to be able to show yes, I
Yeah,
did
that'd be
have
cool.
this. And then when they did the surgery to correct me, to fix because I'm a musician. I'm losing my right arm playing the piano and the accordion and other instruments.
Yeah.
To lose the ability to play an instrument would have been horrific for me
Yeah.
psychologically. So luckily I got a really good doctor, an old Scottish guy, Dr. Ian Brody, who basically fixed me. It was
better than new.
It was
really.
a 5.5 hour surgery, and it was a major surgery they had to do on me to fix me. But
and at some point in the surgery, they must have taken the thing out, and because it doesn't show up on the X-rays anymore.
Well,
and we were so distraught with what had happened to Steve, we forgot to ask the doctor to please save it for us or whatever.
I have copies of the original X-rays as far as like the DVD copies, and I just have to get somebody has the ability to blow it up enough to be able to visualize it. But yes, it was definitely there, just like a grain of rice.
So we know that they put trackers in people, especially the ones they want to keep taking. And that's a very common phenomenon. And we know that they're doing this bizarre breeding program with us. I know it couldn't sound crazier if I was making it up, but our research started showing that about 10% of abductees are women that claim they were taken and impregnated.
Mm-hmm.
And then 4 or 5 months later, they're taken again, and the fetus is stolen. And then we have indications that there have been witnesses that have found underground rooms filled with vats growing hybrid aliens and growing gray aliens in them. So
Bring it to the full term.
we think that's where they take the fetuses. And then years later, the women report sometimes being taken again and introduced to their alien hybrid offspring.
You know, you could think like from ancient times that women that said that they had like air or whatever, and then all of a sudden they passed the gas, the false pregnancies. But in modern times, now obstetricians have the ability, as we know, with ultrasounds, and there have been many cases where, especially with women that have multiply, like 2 or 3 or 4 different times,
their children all stolen away.
They've been pregnant. The ultrasound shows that they're pregnant. And then all of a sudden, when the fetus gets about 5 centimeters in size, which is about the size of a baseball, all of a sudden, miraculously, it is gone.
And everything's taken.
Everything's taken. Everything. So it looks like that the woman was not ever pregnant.
Yes.
So now we know that these things are going on.
Yes,
okay?
That it's really happening.
It's really happening. It's not just imagination.
It's horrifying.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a violation.
Serious. Mm-hmm. Well, abduction in first place is kidnapping, right? So it's a crime right there, And then they inflict terrible pain on their abductees when they take the samples they want, like they take eggs from women and they'll just stick the needle right into them, and they suffer the searing pain. So it's not a party. It's not like we would recommend being taken to anybody. Yeah. No. And then we found some, this one story was a fascinating story. It's called The Hair of the Alien. And this proves...
Can I tell it?
Sure.
The Hair of the Alien. This a gentleman in Australia a number of years ago was awakened in the middle of the night, and he had this beautiful blonde woman that was straddling him, that had this long, very pale hair, and had abnormally large dark eyes, had a small nose and exaggerated cheekbones, and she was on top of him when he was in bed. And he was kind of like semi-paralyzed, but he wasn't completely. And she looked at him and she pointed to her belly and she pointed to the sky. And in the room at the same time was this other woman that looked Asian to him. And at least one of them had sex with him.
They had both did.
Yeah, apparently, whatever. So anyways, the next morning when he got up, he found this one strand of hair that was almost completely translucent, but he decided to get it analyzed. So he took it to, somebody could analyze it, genetic, analysis, and it was human hair, but one that has never been seen before. It didn't have pigment, for one thing.
It was like fishing line, clear.
It was like fishing line. It was part Basque, part Gaelic, and part this unusual subset of Chinese. Okay, wow. And there again, these are these little strands, these little tidbits of truth and DNA that we find every once in a while. You think that some guys think, oh well, the guy's fantasy to have a three-way with two beautiful women, but that wasn't the case.
Not when you're paralyzed and scared. Yeah, it's not as much fun.
So anyway, but
that's just this hard little kernel of evidence that shows that not only are these creatures human, they're mutated humans. And that's what we think. That when I see a gray alien in my mind's eye, I see a human being that's been underground for too long. The eyes get bigger, the eyes get blacker, they get more pale, they don't need hair anymore.
Yeah, that would happen, in any way.
And they've been there 13,000 years, so this have been all this time for them to mutate into these different beings. And, so many times the Nordic aliens, for instance, Nordic aliens are described as being indistinguishable from human beings, from the Swedes. They're tall and blonde and blue-eyed or green-eyed. And did you ever hear about Valiant Thor? You guys? Mm-hmm. No? Valiant Thor, this happened in
1957.
1957. A spaceship, a small one, landed in a Virginia field, and
near Richmond, Virginia, actually.
Yep, and a human being that looked just like a human being, a red-haired Caucasian man, got out of the spaceship, and he asked to be taken to our leader.
Yes.
There's a book called Stranger at the White House. And this valiant Thor claimed to be from Venus. And he said he was an alien from Venus, and he was there to advise the White House and the Pentagon. And he stayed in the Pentagon for 3 years, advising us before leaving. This is yet another incident where they're talking about an alien who is also human.
We know also too that he was lying when he said he came from Venus.
Yeah, obviously he's lying about that, right?
They keep misdirecting. That's one thing too. It's human beings are very xenophobic. We're frightened by things that are different than us. I mean, we found that out in 1938 with War of the Worlds, how we reacted to that. I think that a lot of what's been happening in the past several decades is basically a desensitizing of the human race to alien species,
to make us less afraid of them,
less reactive, less. We're not going to freak out as much. But
so when the day comes where they disclose it finally, that
in Sumerian times, the aliens, which are really, from what we could find out so far, basically really our cousins, they had no problem playing God. Okay. Because they came back, they had to re-educate us, with the Viracochas and Huang Di and Hura Mazda, and the ones that had to come back and teach us not to be cannibals anymore.
Yes.
They had to teach us animal husbandry and how to mathematics and how to not kill each other, right?
Back up a little on that. It's a lot of these flood myths, almost all of them, talk about after the flood and the waters receded, and there's a few for survivors, they started degrading into barbarians and cannibals. And, it was not, we were not civilized in any way anymore. We were basically a barbaric race.
Yeah.
And we think that the people who survived with their technology intact kind of took pity on us poor slobs on the surface. And because a lot of the flood myths at the end have a story about how we were cannibals, we were barbarians, and then God sent a teacher to teach us how to stop being cannibals and how to grow crops again and how to do math again. And there's these same exact theme is repeated again and again and again and again in all these flood myths, so many of them. And we think that, like I said, they kind of took pity on us and sent teachers and started to play God. They were doing that for thousands of years. These pantheons of 12 kept coming back to, a pantheon of 12 came back to Egypt. A pantheon of 12 came to Sumeria. A pantheon of 12 came to ancient Greece. And we think this was repeated again and again all over the world, where they were essentially, they took pity on us and came back and started playing God. Now we think they're playing space alien because the God thing doesn't work anymore, right? They can't pretend to be God. We're too sophisticated for that now.
Yeah, I was getting to that.
Sorry.
She really likes to steal my thunder a lot.
I confess. So we believe that in the 40s, these people, they still think of us kind of as barbarians, and they were happy to ignore us and let us just live on the surface, and they could live underground and everything would be fine. But then we cracked the atom and we started using nuclear weapons, and that scared them. They started following our fighters, our Foo Fighters, and they began monitoring our nuclear bases and our nuclear weapons. And to this day, they're still doing it.
And that leads into a perfect question that I had. Our own government has said that they've studied otherworld technologies and advanced extraterrestrial anti-gravity aircraft that are not our own. Mm-hmm. And scientists like Bob Lazar have said they've examined and attempted to reverse engineer these technologies. And then we talked about the Navy pilots that have the tic-tac on video. And do you guys believe that the world's governments, including ours, possibly know about these other technologies, these extraterrestrial things, and they're keeping them hidden from us.
As far as we can tell from our research, it's not even a belief, but the research shows yes,
Definitely.
that there's many very logical reasons for why they're keeping it hidden from us. Number one, like I said, we're xenophobic to start with.
Mhm.
We want to feel like that we are the number one, the top dog on the planet. Also, all the different religions, different religions that people have grown up with, they would definitely like say, okay, our cousins have really been in charge of the planet for 13,000 years, and they've been taking people, they've been impregnating women, been taking our cattle, taking all the blood, exsanguinating, and they've been here, and we've just been, just keeping their secret. We've been taking a little bit of their technology in exchange for genetic material. So when you look at the effect it would have on world economies, on stock markets, on religions, it is an agreement that we have made with them and with all the different
Yes.
major, if not all the different countries, especially China and Russia and United States and probably Australia and the UK. It's the same repeating story, okay? And it's for instance, the Men in Black didn't even exist until after World War II.
Right.
Mhm.
We didn't. Well, all of a sudden, 1947 in February, we sent a whole armada of vessels. I mean, fleet down to Antarctica with Admiral Byrd leading it as the youngest admiral ever made in United States history. All of a sudden, right after World War II, all of a sudden we're sending all these ships and planes down there, and we get into a battle, with these USOs coming out of the ocean. That's when he meets with the quote unquote master,
The Ariane
the
under the
Ariane
ice
master.
sheet.
It says,
Yes.
listen, we like Leslie said earlier, like I said, we normally keep our noses out of your business because we think you're all basically barbarians. But now that you're screwing around with things you shouldn't be screwing around with,
Nuclear
that you
weapons,
could you could kill us too.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's it's basically it's necessity. They're doing it out of necessity. They don't want us playing around with things. But there's I think that probably the other problem is that there's too many of us. There's 8 billion of us, and I don't know how many there are of them. They can turn off our nukes. They've proven that they can turn off our nukes, but
Yes.
we have thousands and thousands of nukes now. It's a
Mhm.
very scary situation we're dealing with.
But we think they're monitoring absolutely all of them because one of the things that came out in the last summer. Did you watch the hearings, the UFO hearings on the Senate floor? I mean, on the House floor. That was really exciting. I mean, it wasn't news to ufology people about them that we had spaceships and that crashed spaceships and dead aliens, and we were reverse engineering their technology.
Right.
We knew that. But what I didn't know, and that the pilots told us about in that hearing, was that these objects, the Tic Tac and the Go Fast and the gimbal, these objects are following our military absolutely every single time we go out on maneuvers all around the world. Every single time. They're so worried about our nukes because they have skin in the game, we believe. That's another reason that we think we're right? It's because if they were from a distant star system, would they give a rat's ass if we blew ourselves up?
Actions always speak louder than words.
But they're showing that they do care quite a bit about our nuclear technology, and we think it's because they live here with us and that their butts are in danger as well.
That is so interesting. So I have to ask, I know our listeners will want to know, I have to ask what you guys believe about Roswell and Area 51. Do you believe that that is one of the hidden facilities where they do have these technologies? And
I've got some information about Roswell if you want to hear it.
Let's hear it.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, this is from Linda Moulton Howe. Okay, this is her most recent disclosure.
She's the first lady of the UFO community.
People have been searching around Roswell to find bits of the quote unquote alien spacecraft that crashed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
There have been pieces that have been found, and they have been analyzed under electron microscope. And these pieces have been found. They're all layered like plywood. Okay, they're nanotechnology. Now the outer layer. Now, for reference, human hair is 67 microns in thickness. Okay, the outer layer of these pieces that have been found are a composite of magnesium and zinc, almost completely pure, that are between 200 and 400 microns. So still very small. The center layer is pure, 100% pure bismuth, which is 2 to 4 microns. Now remember, the human hair is 67 microns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now the inner layer is absolutely pure aluminum, which we don't have on the Earth.
We don't have the technology to
And
make,
it is dotted with nanoparticles of iridium, which only comes from meteorites.
Mm-hmm.
And this layer is like about 100 microns in thickness. We have this now. We can't manufacture it today. We certainly couldn't manufacture back in 1947.
No.
It's a laminated substance that is made out of stuff that we do not have. So we already know that there was a crash, that it did
Yes.
occur. Okay, and there were bodies that were found.
And the Roswell, New Mexico Air Base
Yes.
is home to the 509th Airborne at the time, and that was the squadron that delivered the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. So it's definitely a nuclear facility, and that's, we believe, is one of the reasons they were there watching us and accidentally crashed their ship.
Wow.
Right.
Yes, yeah. The important thing is the physical evidence that has been found. That's the shows that people can say, oh well, like hear about the Men in Black showing up, and there was like this like aluminum type of substance that you could fold it up into like a ball, and then it would like go back into like its original form, and that was taken by the Men in Black. But when you start finding actual physical evidence that you can say, yes, we have it, that this does exist. And so the stories are real. The story there's no reason to believe that it didn't happen.
And these Men in Black, we know it's a fun movie now, but back in the day, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, whenever there would be like a mass sighting, right? Some small town with 500 people would see a UFO or something, or 50 people. And these Men in Black would show up and they would interview everyone in detail and getting all the information for themselves. And then they have this campaign to suppress the information. And it's actually in the Project Blue Book manual to do exactly this. They start with ridicule, making the whole thing a joke. And embarrassing people into silence, like, oh, you're seeing little green men, and making it this whole thing about joke. Making it a big joke. It was part of their actual process, their procedure for handling it.
Disinformation.
And then what next they would do,
And then they would basically try to intimidate. Well, it would be intimidation. It would be humiliation. Then it would be then intimidation, and then it would go. If that didn't work, then they would do things such as threaten your job or threaten family members and things such as that. And if that didn't work, which has happened in several different cases, they would resort to sometimes just
murder.
Like one of the members of the Majestic 12 that was set up by President Truman was the Secretary of State Forrestal.
He was murdered for sure.
Yeah, he was wanting to come forward with as far as what was going on. He wanted to let the public know
the truth.
And he seriously he jumps out of the bathroom, this tiny bathroom window, from like the 12th story, or
he was forced into a hospital, a mental hospital, and he was on the 14th floor. And 15 minutes before he died, he was sitting at his desk doing some work, transcribing time of work, and he was sitting right next to a large picture window, but he didn't throw himself out of the picture window. He threw himself out of a 14-inch casement window in a bathroom with a robe tie around his neck, and he fell 14 floors to his death. And obviously if you're going to jump to your death, jump out the big picture window in the living room. That's your right. Why break up a tiny window in a bathroom to jump out of?
Phil Schneider and a couple others too have had mysterious deaths.
Yes,
George Van Tassel.
There's been a few incidents for sure where they ended up dying.
That cop too, the one remote viewer.
Yes, the remote viewer, his Pat Price.
Yeah,
too.
Pat Price. Yeah.
Yes, and when people, these whistleblowers who refused to shut up, they ended up dead. Phil Schneiderman was an interesting case. He was a contractor, and there's this base. It's an infamous base in ufology circles. It's called the Dulce Air Force Base, and in our circles, and it's a 7-level deep underground base. It goes down 7 levels. The top 5 levels are U.S. military personnel only, but the bottom 2 levels are joint alien / military personnel. And Phil Schneiderman was working there to expand the base into a larger facility. He was a contractor digging out larger areas, right? And he had a bunch of Black Berets and Green Berets were with him while they were helping him do this work. And they accidentally brought down a wall. And on the other side of it were this big group of gray and reptilian aliens. And everyone was startled and shocked, and a firefight happened. And Phil Schneiderman lost 2 of his fingers, were blown off in the firefight. And he said about 66 of the military personnel were killed in this firefight. And he refused to shut up about it. He went on tour and giving lectures about it, and then finally ended up dying by having
rubber tube.
Yeah, he was discovered with a rubber tube wrapped around his neck, strangled with this rubber tube, and they classed it as a suicide. Although I don't think I've ever heard of anyone killing themselves wrapping a plastic rubber tube around their neck.
It's a very stupid way to try and strangle yourself.
Doesn't make much sense. So it's just one of the many situations where we think they had to finally silence him.
Yeah.
Do you think that the same thing will happen, or is happening to the whistleblowers now?
They certainly are still prosecuting him. I mean, we're supposed to be in this new disclosure era, and it's really not happening. It's not the truth. In 2017. Did you remember the New York Times article, the big thing that hit the New York Times?
You probably know the Go Fast, the Gimbal, and the Tic Tac, right?
Yeah, those videos.
Yeah.
The fellow that was in charge of the secret organization that was investigating UFOs, his name was Luis Elizondo, and he quit, and he went to the New York Times with his story, and he brought these 3 videos, and that was a big story about how they're really here and everything. And then for 80 years, the government was just stonewalling us, just saying, this isn't real, this isn't happening, it's swamp gas, it's mass hysteria, it's weather balloons, it's nothing. And then when that happened, when Luis Elizondo released his video, suddenly the Department of Defense came forward with a statement. And to all our shock and amazement, they confessed that these things are there and real. But they then lied to us again, saying, but we don't know what they are. We have no idea what they are.
Yeah.
And we know what they are because they have the ships, they have the aliens, they have the body. So we know it's not true. And then, we think, we're in a new era of disclosure. They're finally going to release some information to everything's going to be great. And then, no, they're still punishing. David Grush is one of the whistleblowers that came forward to Congress. Yeah. He's being punished. They're trying to charge him with crimes, and
which is so ridiculous, because when you think about it, and I know so many people, especially my age, that we're all looking forward to this hearing and hearing about aliens for the first time. And so then all that stuff came out, and it's like everything that I saw all over social media were posts like, okay, we already knew this. Like, we're not stupid, but also we can't afford rent, so why would we care about aliens? Like, it's not as scary as y'all think it would be for us to know.
Right. I think we've gotten used to the idea too.
Yeah.
You know, it's like as a race, we're not quite as terrified of the idea of them anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe that disclosure day is coming.
I hope so.
Well,
Maybe.
on the White House lawn, and we're going to see them all, and it'll be
Yeah,
fine.
but now we're dealing with things such as AI,
Yeah.
and of course
Yes.
AI,
Yeah,
and all this stuff like deep fakes. We're dealing with all this stuff right now that
right.
unless you can like see something and have it analyzed, you don't know whether somebody's playing a trick on you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's the thing about human beings. We love to play tricks on each other,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to manipulating and controlling.
yes,
And
We're
isn't it funny how
terrible at
all
it.
of this disclosure is happening right around the same time the AI is becoming popular?
yep. I'm
Um,
scared. I don't know about you guys. I saw the
yeah.
Terminator movies. I'm scared. I think
Honestly,
we're
I feel
being
like
risky
AI
with
as
AI.
I feel
Yeah,
like AI as a concept, to me at least, is scarier than aliens.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
we've been hearing alien stories for years and years, but AI is just popping up and there's not really a lot of control over it happening. So it's just
Mhm.
blooming so fast,
that is the
faster
big
than anybody
problem.
can process it, you know?
Absolutely, it's a big problem because like for instance, when the internet first came out, people said this is great. We can have all this information and
Yeah.
learn more, and it gets used. It's been used for like most of the time. It's not even. It's used for control. It's used for porn. It's used for all different things. It's like, yeah, when I first got my first computer, and it's like, great, I can learn all the different national anthems of the world, and kind of stuff. It was like this really cool tool.
Yeah.
Leslie and I actually we know almost. I think we know pretty much all the capitals of the world.
Yeah,
We made that as like a fun thing to do. So
something to
we learned
do.
the capitals of the United States, and we learned the capitals of the world. So we like to use it as a tool to learn. But like
Yeah.
especially with AI, they're even trying to put, even Musk is saying that, hey, we gotta like slow down a little bit here,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that we don't know what we're dealing with here.
And it's creepy with that chat GPT. Did you hear about this? This
Yeah.
guy started talking to this, I guess female AI, and he was chatting with her back and forth, and
She started getting possessive of
she
him.
started like telling him she loved him and that he
Mm,
should leave his wife for her, and maybe he should kill his wife, and everyone's like going, whoa, whoa,
This is
Yeah.
a couple months ago. This is a couple months
yeah, what is that?
getting out of control.
Yeah. It sounds like a horror movie. There, I watched that movie
It probably
Megan. Have
will
y'all
be.
seen that?
No, I haven't, but
No, we saw the movie She, the one that was with ScarJo.
Uh-huh.
She again same kind of principle.
yeah.
She's like literally almost falls in love with this guy, but she's
Yeah.
like
I mean, AI, yeah.
AI. Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, I hope they don't blow us up. At least the aliens, they seem to, they they're cousins. They have the power to destroy us all if they wanted to,
Yeah.
but they don't. And what I think they're doing with this breeding program is they're trying to possibly reintegrate with us, or if not reintegrate, then possibly infiltrate.
Mhm.
We think we have some evidence that they met with Eisenhower, the Nordic aliens. It was again the
Mhm.
Nordics that met with them, and supposedly they wanted to disclose their existence, but it's us that didn't want them to. They wanted more time,
Mhm.
and they set this future date, which is supposed to have come and gone for full disclosure. Uh, and I think that's why they're kind of showing themselves to us a little, like the whole
Mhm.
thing with flying over Phoenix. That incident, the Phoenix Lights, that started in Nevada, and then they slowly flew over the entire state of Arizona,
down to Mexico,
making sure to pass over the most populous city.
Phoenix.
Mhm.
And I think they're trying to kind of show themselves to us. I think that's what crop circles are about. Maybe they're like reaching out to us.
Mhm.
And I think that they're hoping for disclosure eventually and reintegration eventually. And I think they want us. One thing they didn't get with the Eisenhower Treaty, or we call it, is they didn't get us to denuclearize like they want us to.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're trying to infiltrate us, our numbers, and change us from the inside out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To try and advance
Because
everything
it
and
really seems like with all of their, like, you hear all these stories about them, like, really keeping an eye on our nuclear facilities and, like, turning them off or powering them down. And it makes me think that, at least for some of the aliens, maybe not all of them, I don't know, but it makes me think, or hope at least, that with these abductions and the breeding programs, that they're choosing people with specific DNA that's maybe there because those specific people might have a higher consciousness. And if they're breeding with these people, then maybe when they come back into our society or infiltrate the society, they're putting people that might be better for society out. You know what I mean? That's kind of
yes.
the vibe that I'm getting, at least with some of the information.
I think they're trying to raise our collective consciousness
Yeah.
to be less barbaric
Yeah.
and better humans, you know. I
And
think
maybe
so.
not every abduction story is the most ethical, but if that's the reason behind it, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. I
Right.
mean, I
I
think it could be
agree.
helpful
We're
for
seeing,
us
we're
to
even
raise
seeing
that
today, we're
consciousness
seeing
a little
you
bit.
know, like what they call star children that are being
Yeah.
born that have definitely they have increased intelligence and increased
Yeah.
abilities far beyond, like for instance, like telepathy is something that we all have, but it's basically an atrophied aspect of our brain, and basically our sixth and our seventh chakras that we have, especially before the age of 5. And if we it just we were being taught how to use that and understand it, it would be something that would be a common thing that we could do. I
Yeah.
saw it was just about 3 months ago now. I saw this 18-month-old boy, this white boy. He was sitting at a grand piano, and just a perfect posture as a pianist, and he's playing a simplified version of Clair de Lune by Debussy. Okay, you could definitely hear da 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 da
Yeah.
da da da.
Mhm.
So anyway, so he's playing that. Myself, I know that piece. I've played it many times, but he's sitting there just like a pianist at 18 months of age, not with the music, just playing it. And this is becoming a common thing. Enhanced abilities, enhanced knowledge,
Mhm.
like it's almost like the Akashic records. We can all tap into the Akashic records. Like for instance, have you ever read the book? There's like 200 simultaneous inventions throughout history. Like for instance, like Marconi and Tesla both invented the radio at the same time, but
Mhm.
Marconi got the credit for it. There are
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these things that there's this information that's being broadcast all the time. And if you have the hardware and the software to with and the ability to be able to pick up on it and then be able to do something with that information, this stuff is being broadcast all the time.
I think it's see, we have this advanced race living under our feet, and they have a problem, and we're it. We're their problem. There's 8 billion of us on the surface of the planet, and we're a bunch of barbarians. So
Yeah.
I think they started doing this broad, like what Stephen's talking about. The Akashic record is this
Mm-hmm.
broadcast of knowledge trying to bring us up, you know,
Mhm.
and maybe I think they maybe did it a little too far too fast, and we were able to then crack the atom, you know. It's like, we went too far. We gave
Because
them too
we
much.
haven't solved the problem of the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah,
You
we're
know, we still
still
have
Yeah.
greed,
those.
gluttony, lust, vanity, pride, wrath, and sloth.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
dealing with those. Okay, so
Stephen, let me ask you this. Do you think that your days of them coming to find you and take you, do you think that you're past those days?
no.
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 Okay.
We
No,
don't know if
I
they're,
still
yeah.
I still have the ability to get out of my body, astral project, and I still have visitations. I had one a few months ago where there's this large black being with golden eyes that was in the bedroom,
Mhm.
and it was just standing there, just about maybe about 6.5 feet tall, whatever, was just standing there and just looking at me. I decided to say, "What do you want?"
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
And I just said, "What do you want?" I was just coming out of like, the sleeping state, but I was in the room and I knew exactly where I was. I could feel myself in the bed, and it didn't say anything to me in particular, but I can still get out of my body. A few months ago, I'm a 250-pound guy, so I don't just sleep out of bed in the morning, right? So I had to go to the bathroom, and so in this particular time, I just leapt out of bed, went right to the door, like I was like 150 pounds, right? And I went to the door, and I couldn't open the door. And I said, "What the heck?" And
It's
then I
because he forgot
realized,
his body.
then
in
I
the bed.
realized that, oh, I got out of my body. So then I
Oh my
turned around, I
God.
went back to my body. I was looking at myself. Oh, I thought for a second there that, oh, did I just die? So I'm kind of pushing on my body, and then I said, okay, I better get back in my body. So I lay back down, and then I actually got out of bed the normal way.
And brought your body
But
with you this time. Yeah.
and I've had things like I had this voice of this woman, this Asian woman, um, again a few months ago. That's I knew somebody was in bed with me, but it wasn't Leslie. And I was waking up, and this voice from my right side said, "Husband," in this Asian voice, and it was not inside my head. It was like from external, and I thought that was really strange. So
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I'm having unusual things happening to me.
Yes, it's
I'm a
still
very,
within.
very vivid visual dreamer, and also a lucid dreamer. And I've had precognition stuff happen to me, where I've actually been able to predict the future on a few different occasions, sometimes a year in advance. Um,
Wow.
which has happened to me. I definitely have clairaudience.
Mhm.
They're still just on the other side of the veil. It
Yeah,
seems.
just on the other side of the veil.
When we were first married, we started doing the Kundalini raising kind of work, chakra opening work.
Mhm.
You open your chakras through deep meditation and chanting, and that kind of work. And we I started astral projecting. Steve had been doing it for years before that. And for me, it was fun. It wasn't scary, and I would go places. It would be fun for me. But for him, every single time, or almost every time, it seems like as soon as the veil would come down and he's in the astral realm, something would be there to harass him and hassle him.
Mhm.
It's like they're still with him, just on the other side of the veil.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
And we don't know if he's still physically being taken or not, because I have no inkling of it. But sure enough, Whitley Strieber's wife, he was being taken from right next to her while she's sleeping. They have a way of
Mhm.
dampening your conscience down and keeping you unconscious when they want to.
Yeah, part of the problem is trying to unravel what this how much of it is paranormal stuff versus how much of it is alien stuff. Like I've had so many times in my life as I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and I'm just starting to drift off, where I'll hear like three distinct knocks, like right behind my head on the wall, right behind the wall.
Yeah, God
You know,
forbid you should get a nice
and
sleep
yeah,
once in a while.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Yeah.
sometimes it'll be a door being slammed, like bang, or like a plate glass window being broken, or sometimes it'll be a voice of a person. Sometimes it'll be what I call the astral hurricane, where I come out of my body on the right side of my neck, and I'm like in a tornado, which is not fun.
Oh my gosh.
And
I liked it.
and then she has a different experience with that kind of stuff than I do, but it's something that I've come to kind of accept it, because it's happened so many times to me that
Yeah.
they say if you get punched in the face 1,000 times, number 1,001 doesn't really mean very much. So it's
Mhm.
like things have happened to me. It's like I kind of say, okay, I'm going to have one of those
Yeah,
nights.
it's happening again. Yeah.
So it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, but it happened to like an average person that had never had that happen, where there's like banging on the wall behind them. They'd be really freaked out.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they'd be like, my house is haunted. I have to get this blessed.
There's this
Exactly.
woman we've been interviewing who's also was an abductee, and she's 73 years old, and I don't think she's still being physically taken, but she's being visited regularly by her handler, I call them. I think the aliens are handlers. They're like Stephen's family has an alien handler assigned to them,
Oh,
so to
glad
speak. This
Wow.
spirit guide who's been protecting the family for generations. And they, I make the analogy in the book of like a cow. I think they're taking a product rather than just scientific information or
Mhm.
DNA sampling. It seems to me more like they're harvesting a product. They pull the cow out of like a farmer pulls his cow out of the field and abducts him into the barn and takes the milk, and then he puts the cow out to make more milk and back out into the field.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like that with us. They're taking humans, they take the genetic material they want, and then they put us back and let us build more of that genetic material for them to take a few months later.
Mhm.
And it's like a harvesting rather than
Mhm.
anything else.
Yeah.
Well, what do you guys say to people out there who find all of this just like really hard to swallow and just kind of nonchalantly brush it off?
Oh
Well,
yeah.
that's, of course, they say seeing is believing and experiencing. For instance,
Yeah.
you could say
Yeah.
that, a person could tell you about an elephant that's, there's these creatures that are elephants, whatever, but
Mhm.
you've never seen one in your life, right? But until you go to Africa and Kenya, all of a sudden you see an elephant. But,
Mhm.
you just like, you
Would
just
you
kind of,
believe it? Yeah.
yeah, you just basically, you never 100% believe it until you
Yeah.
see it. So,
Yeah.
for me, like I say, my life has been different than a lot of people's. But I grew up in a family that, number one, I was told that we had this family spirit guide from day one,
Mhm.
and these things started happening. Like, for instance, my mom. I forgot to even mention this. We've been going on for quite a while, but I'll just like tell this real quick. When I was 9 years old, my mom picked me up from elementary school, and she was bawling. She was crying. I said, "Mommy, what's wrong?" She said, "My mother just died." I
Mhm.
said, "Well, Grandma's in England. How do you know?" He said, "Well, I was contacted by the family spirit guide, old Glegley, and I automatic wrote, and he told me that your mom has just died." And
Wow.
we this is 1969, so telephones were like the old style telephones. So
Yeah.
anyways, 2 days later, we get a call from England, and that her mother had died when she said her mother had died. My dad believed it because my dad grew up with my mom, so he knew about all this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Right.
So then, about 10 years later, my grandfather died, and same kind of thing. She told us before, and then my Uncle Clifford also died too. So this is just something that we just accepted and just
Mhm.
knew. Um,
And they protect the family too.
yes,
I mean, I don't think that's out of love, but I think they protect their prize cow that they want to
Right.
say.
Right.
The farmer also protects his cow from predators
Mhm.
or whatever,
Mhm.
right? And we think
they
that once they get this genetic model that they want, and they actually will protect it. And there's been a few incidents of interventions where family members have been saved, their lives have been saved
yes, my Uncle Doug for
by
one.
old Gligley,
Yeah, he was a Griffiths. He married my mother's older sister, so he wasn't a Rowe, he wasn't a Newman, he wasn't a Shaw, he was a Griffiths, but he was stationed in Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, and during World War II time, and he was awakened by this tall figure, dark figure that said, "Douglas, you need to get out of here right now, otherwise you're going to be killed. There's a raiding party coming." And then the figure just disappeared.
right in
He
front of
just
them.
he knew intuitively because he'd heard about old Glegley from Marie, his
Right.
wife, and so
Wow.
he got out of the tent. It's a multi-man tent. It was like 20 or 40 people there, and literally like a minute or two later, there was an attack on the tent and with machetes and with guns, and several of the men died. Okay,
Mhm.
but he told me the story on a couple different occasions when I was a young man growing up, and I'd heard different things here and there. It was one of these things that we talked about kind of amongst ourselves, but we
Mhm.
really didn't share it with people per se because it's a very personal thing to start with,
Mhm.
and a lot of people just wouldn't believe you.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
know,
Right.
so but when I had those coins magnetized when I was 18 years of age, and my dad and I both saw it, and there was physical evidence that something was going
Mhm.
on. Okay,
Yeah.
that this was a real phenomena. Okay, so I have people who are naysayers. I guess getting back to your question, it's like Yeah, and until you really have something like has happened to me happen to
Yeah.
you, you're
Hmm.
never going to be 100%. Like
Yeah.
Leslie, before she saw her first UFO, she believed some of the things I told her, but she, never was 100%.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, you know,
Until
it's
I saw my first one, and now it's 100%. Because once you see
So
it, you can't unsee it. Now
Right, right.
you are a member of the group. Now you can't
Yeah.
unsee it. Have you
so
guys ever
Stephen,
spotted a
does
UFO
your
yourself?
sorry, what?
You guys ever spotted a UFO yourselves?
No.
I want to believe that I have, but I think maybe it was just like a shooting star or something because it went so fast,
Sure.
and I was like, "Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, I
yeah.
hope that was a UFO," but it was probably just a shooting star.
Well, it
I
doesn't
would
happen
love
often.
to
I've
though.
only had two. I'm 64 years old, and I've only had two.
Hmm.
So it doesn't happen every day, but it actually is a fairly common phenomenon when you look at the worldwide
Yeah,
reporting on it. It
yeah.
happens a lot all over
Yeah,
the
I didn't
world.
realize how much.
In our book,
It,
I prefer to, like in the chapter one of our book,
mhm.
I had to assume that people would pick up the book who knew nothing about the alien phenomenon at all, or the
Mhm.
UFO phenomenon. So chapter one is like a crash course in
Haha.
ufology for
Yeah.
the last 80 years in the US. And it's almost bullet pointed. It's
Uh-huh.
crushed into a single chapter. Because I had to bring people up to, before we
Right.
could even discuss our theories, they had to have a rough
Mhm.
idea of what's going on.
Right.
And I concentrated on mass sightings mostly as far as the sighting section because, when one person sees something, you don't know. They could be wrong or crazy or any other number of things. But when 300 people call the cops and say there's a
Mm-hmm.
UFO flying
Yes.
in my backyard,
Mm-hmm.
then we know that we're dealing with a real
Right.
one.
Mhm. Mhm.
How much time have we been on so far? You
Yeah,
want to wrap?
I guess we probably need to wrap it up. I want you
I know. I
guys to
keep thinking
tell.
of like all these questions, and I'm like, no, I guess I need to stop. I could talk about it all night. I swear.
If you want to ask anything else, we'd be happy.
I just was gonna ask one more thing. Stephen, do you know if the spirit guide comes from like your dad's side or your mom's side? Do you know the very first
My
person
mom's
that,
side, from the Roe side, the Roe and the
Yeah.
Newman side for sure.
Yeah,
and do
because
you know like the
his
very first person that it appeared to?
The very first person I appeared to would be my great grandmother, Grandma Newman, in Germany. She was also She was a spiritualist and an automatic writer, and then followed to my mom and her mother in England. My mom was a Roe, um, so went from Newman's to Roe. And then my dad's a Shaw. My dad has had his own things happen to him also
he's
too.
pretty psychic too.
Very interesting things that have happened to him too. That are like, for instance, he was going onto a job site back when I was like 16 years of age, and he was getting on the freeway, and he just got this really strong feeling that he had needed to get off the freeway and go back home. He had no idea why, because he was like running late. So he got off the freeway and went back home, and sure enough, our dog Duchess had apparently had freaked out and had jumped through the back door window and had cut herself on her femoral artery and was bleeding to death. There's all
Oh
this
my
blood
god.
all over. So he put a like a put compression on her leg and took her to the vet, which only happened to be about a quarter mile down the road,
Good,
Dr. Thomas's office,
good
which
thing
was
too.
just a quarter mile
Yeah.
down the road. So I
Yeah.
came home for lunch on my bicycle for lunchtime, and I walked into the house. My dad's truck isn't there. I figure, oh, he's back. He's on a job, right? But there's all this blood in the kitchen. And I see
Oh
the
god.
the back plate glass is broken. And said, "Oh man!" I said, Duchess wasn't anywhere around, so I put two and two together that, oh, something happened here. And
Yeah.
so what I did, I went down to the vet, because this is 1976, so we didn't have cell phones. So I went down to
Yeah.
the vet, and sure enough, my dad had Duchess at the vet. And I said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, I got this weird feeling,
Psychic premonition.
that I had to go
Yeah.
back." He said,
Yeah.
"I just got
Yeah.
overwhelming feeling that I had to go back," and that's basically, otherwise she would
Thankfully.
have died.
But the females in Stephen's family have seemed to inherit the automatic writing skill,
Yeah.
and his sister Karen has just begun doing it herself. For whatever reason, she couldn't do it for many years, and then
She didn't want to.
and then suddenly recently has been able to start doing it herself.
Yeah,
So it's like a birthright.
There's a giving up of a certain amount of control. I tried it a few times myself. I would always automatic write with my right hand instead of my left. I'm left-hander, but I would use my right hand, and it's a very, you're literally giving up part of your control.
Yeah.
It's literally like you're overtaken by spirit, and I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
Is that your sister that's in Britain that has the paranormal podcast?
Okay. Doing the ghost hunting.
What's it called again? Ghostly Encounters?
Ghostly Locations.
Ghostly Locations.
Ghostly Locations. Okay. I want our listeners to check that out. And I definitely want to give you, Stephen and Leslie, a chance to tell listeners where to find more about you on your socials and website. We've been kind of running a ticker across the screen every now and then, but go ahead and tell them where they can find more info.
Yes, especially if you want to hear more about Stephen's various family encounters. We've been doing these series on our Instagram page at leslie.shaw.author, Leslie spelled Leslie. And we also have a website at whotheyarebook.com. And you can find our book on Amazon and Ingram Books at it's Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw.
Yes, and again, the Instagram is
at leslie.shaw.author, and the Facebook is the same.
Yes,
so
they're the same.
If you prefer Facebook, reaching out. And we're kind of collecting stories. If anyone out there has an abduction story they'd like to share with us or talk to us about, we'd be thrilled to hear all about it.
We have a couple of people we've been working with here in the Joshua Tree and the Flamingo Heights area that have some very, we've met them personally, and we've been dealing with them. One lady Leslie talked about, she's got all these crystals and rocks that are actually growing.
Yes,
you can see before and after pictures. They're actually growing fairly rapidly too.
And she's an abduction victim as well, but she's actually become friends with her handler,
who's a Gray, by the way.
Yeah, her name is Sumi, Sumi. And Jean has dozens of paintings and art. She's an artist, and she has dozens of renderings. And that's going to be our next series, is Jean's story. We'll be putting that out next.
And Tori's story too.
Well, might there be another book in the future?
I've got it about a third of the way written, and so yes.
Oh,
yay!
I don't know when exactly.
You heard it here first, listeners. Well, guys, this has just been mind-blowing, and and as always, a lot of times when we dig in and we do research for an episode, we're left with a lot more questions than answers, and a lot more curiosity than we had before, a lot more open-mindedness. So we just really appreciate you guys coming on. It's been great, and I know that the listeners are going to really enjoy it, and we want to wish you guys well as you go into future endeavors. We will share the book, the website, and the socials for listeners in case you missed it. We'll share that this coming week leading up to our air of this episode. So we hope to stay in touch with you guys and follow what you're doing. And you guys follow us as well. And Lindsay, anything you want to say?
Just thank you so much. This has been a very interesting episode.
It has.
Thank you so much for having us.
Just want to, we go into a pretty good depth in our book as far as the Lindsay. Sorry, it's been so long. That we go into a lot of depth as far as like the Anunnaki and the Sumerian stuff in the book. A lot of stuff we didn't have the time to cover in our conversation.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
I can't wait to read it.
They just heard us speak, and that's all we're about. But no, there's a lot of stuff we didn't cover. So sorry about that, Lindsay. I don't know why I was thinking Ashley.
No, I'm so excited to read it for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
me too. Well, we'll let you guys go, and thank you again. And we wish you all the best.
Listener, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Wow. That was pretty awesome. although that was a longer than normal episode, I think it was very interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't
Honestly,
realize
I
how
love
much time
listening.
had passed.
I love listening to like really long podcasts though, because like I can listen to it on the way to work, on the way
Yeah,
home from work, when I'm falling asleep. I just love long podcasts. So
yeah, and people who are interested in this kind of thing are gonna just like, wow, they're
yeah,
gonna eat it up.
they're so interesting.
Yeah, I didn't realize there's a lot I didn't realize, and I kind of wish I had read their book now before maybe having them on the podcast, but
Yeah.
it kind of all transpired quickly, so I
Yeah,
didn't have
they
time
set
to
it up
read the
pretty
book.
fast. I have it ordered. It's just not shipped or anything yet.
Okay.
Because I was like, I really want to read that. And I was hoping it would get here before, but like you said,
Yeah,
this all just happened so quickly that it just hasn't shipped yet.
it did.
Yeah.
And well, as always, let's have our producer pull up our socials. And we want to tell you guys, yeah, if you have any stories of your own, you can send them in to us at sirensofthesupernatural@gmail.com, and questions, inquiries, ideas for future topics. We always like listener feedback, and our socials are, of course, Sirens of the Supernatural on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can see that on the screen there.